Hearing what everyone else is saying about Soul makes me feel like I'm a crazy person. Is everyone serious? Are we watching the same movie? You're seriously telling me that this inspired you to feel better about your life? The movie that told you to not be sad about your life and instead just enjoy the little things? Like a fucking Hallmark card? Soul is a technical marvel of a movie with the most incoherent plot I have ever seen from something Pixar or Disney have put out. It is the movie equivalent of a bunch of people yelling over one another to try to get their point across. The movie has a lot of interesting, compelling, and even important ideas, but couldn't choose one to focus on and ended up tripping over itself constantly and butchering its themes. The explicit message of this movie, the thing we are supposed to take away based on the things the character said, is feeling sad? Have unfulfilled dreams? Just be happier. Then you won't be so sad. Which is, of course, nonsense. Despite that, of all of the Pixar movies I've watched, which is all of them, Soul hit me the hardest by far, because this movie spoke directly toward my generation and the difficulties I, and pretty much everyone I know who's my age, now have as adults. We've been told our entire lives that we're all special and that our value comes from being successful at our jobs, so that should be our primary focus in life, and that our job can be our dream job if we just work hard enough. There was a lot of propaganda along the lines of, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. But then we grew up and entered the adult world, and it turns out that not only does nobody actually care about whether or not you're doing things you care about, but your dreams are actually completely unviable, and instead you're just going to spend the rest of your life working menial jobs so you can pay your bills, so you can afford rent and food, so that you can continue to be productive at your menial job. There's no room for dreams or passion in industry in the real world. We've been taught our dreams and passions should manifest themselves in our jobs, and that our jobs are the only things that really matter. So we're sort of just left grasping for meaning in a world devoid of it. And Soul addresses this chronic issue directly. Joe's dream is to be a professional jazz musician, and he disregards everything else in his life that doesn't directly support that dream. When he dies and looks back on his life, he feels that his life was completely unfulfilling because he didn't end up becoming a jazz musician professionally. But as the movie continues, it paints us a picture of Joe's life that shows how fulfilling it was even without jazz. It highlights the community he is already a part of that he's been neglecting, the positive impact he's had on people's lives as a friend and mentor, and the value he's derived from playing jazz even when he's not playing professionally. At the same time, we see how the single-minded focus of passion has been extremely toxic for 22, how she, and even other characters like Connie, are casualties of a bad system but blame themselves for its failure. The entire first half of the movie methodically and relentlessly provides evidence that society is fundamentally wrong in its view of fulfillment and purpose, and that it is actively undermining the importance of community in your life. And that hit me extremely hard. Everything else in my life, all of the other people I know, and the movies I've watched, and even the value system society has thrust upon me, say that my purpose exists in my job, and that alone should make me happy, and that my dream should be my job. But Soul is showing the pain that can come from that philosophy, and the other aspects of life that people neglect as a result, things that I have neglected as a result. The movie tore open wounds and shoved them in my face, in many cases with scenes I have directly experienced, and seemed to promise that it was actually going to give me a solution, or at least some guidance to this unsolvable problem of looking for meaning in places that don't have any. But then the movie takes a hard left, and all of a sudden Joe has everything he wants just fall into his lap, and he realizes that his problem all along was actually that he wasn't appreciating the little things. You know, like standing on a beach once, or seeing fireworks when he was a kid, or watching a leaf float off of a tree. His problem was just that he took small things for granted instead of giving them more meaning, and now he's going to enjoy every minute of his new life. And when he said that, and the movie faded to black, I went fucking apeshit. That's what I should take away from this? Appreciate the little things? That's what I was missing? Appreciate the little things is just a really toxic message that inherently undermines all of your problems. The little things can mean literally anything in your life that is even slightly positive, which is basically everything. So you technically always have a reason to be happy instead of sad. Appreciate the little things really boils down to you always have a reason to feel happy, so you should always be happy. And if you're not, it's your fault. All this does is reinforce this idea that if you're not literally on the verge of death and you're still feeling sad, there's something wrong with you. Our culture, or at least American culture, and social media in general really like to imply that message, even though it's objectively wrong. Everyone experiences sadness, even people who have everything going for them. Sadness is a valid feeling to have, and telling someone to just ignore that feeling because of something unrelated is deeply unhealthy and flat out cruel. And yet, that's the message that Soul landed on. That was the point of the entire movie. Just appreciate the little things. And that's why I really couldn't believe the response to Soul. The movie showed me a reflection of all of the problems I was having in life. In some cases, shoved them in my face pretty aggressively, and then explicitly told me the solution was to just not be sad anymore. Explicitly! What am I supposed to do with that? The answer was get very angry about the movie and feel worse about myself for a while. But eventually that passed, and over time I've been thinking more about what I can actually take away from the movie. The first thing is that it turns out that most people don't really pay attention too closely when they watch movies. It seems like most people who watch this movie have their own definition for what it means to appreciate life more that is tailored to them. And the movie's ending is vague enough that they can just interpret it however they want and leave feeling more optimistic about their life. The second thing that I actually think is a lot more interesting is that it seems like Soul didn't actually know what it wanted to say because it was too personal to the people making it. That thing I was saying earlier about the plot sounding like a bunch of people talking over each other might have literally been the production process for this movie. On the one hand, the movie is trying to show how your life can be fulfilling even if it isn't possible to achieve your dreams. But then it goes and undermines that message by showing that you can actually achieve your dreams if you just work hard enough. But then actually your dreams aren't even that important in the first place. And the movie tries to show the importance of community and how you can derive fulfillment from that, but no, actually it's most important to just appreciate small things in your life that you normally take for granted. Meanwhile, the movie also tries to address how adults can ruin kids' lives by not accepting who they are, and the importance of having a supportive environment. 22's entire story is about how adults keep having expectations for what she should like and who she should be without ever taking into account what she thinks about everything. You also have a scene with Connie talking about how she feels a similar thing, that she doesn't like school and feels left out constantly, but Joe's mentorship and support has empowered her, and the drummer that Joe mentored in the past, to continue to pursue a passion that they find really fulfilling. But also, 22 teaches Joe that passion is overrated. I know that the main point of 22's story is that you need to be supportive of kids and not pigeonhole them into your ideas of what they should be, or even expect them to know what they want to be. That doesn't really have anything to do with Joe's story, or the scenes they show of Joe's life, and that's the lesson that he takes away from all of this. In short, it's a mess. But the thing is, all of these scenes are individually pretty powerful. It's clear that these were all personal experiences that the creators had in their lives that they felt were important to have in the movie. But it's also clear that they each responded to those experiences differently and took away different lessons, so they couldn't really agree on what the takeaway of this movie should be. There's also this funny added layer that most of the people working at Pixar right now are probably working their dream jobs or something close to it. Do they all feel fulfilled by their careers? Or do they still feel like something's missing from their lives, just like Joe did in the movie that they made? And do some of the people who made this movie think that your singular goal should be to work at your dream job? Or do some of them think that you should accept compromises along the way? Because Soul also doesn't know what to say about that. Joe does get to become a musician at the end of the movie, so his hard work is validated, but there are a lot of scenes that are focused specifically on the fact that Joe needs to be realistic and get a quote-unquote real job that is financially stable. The principal gives Joe the news he's working full-time in person and goes over all of the benefits in a lot of detail. Joe's barber talked about how he originally wanted to be a veterinarian, but couldn't afford to go to vet school because of his daughter. And Joe's conflict with his mom centers around the fact that she thinks Joe needs to be able to support himself financially because he's been relying on her to pay his bills his entire life. She also points out that Joe should be satisfied with having a stable job that's adjacent to jazz. So it seems like the creators of Soul couldn't really agree on the answers to even these fundamental questions about career, because their answers probably depend on how exactly they got to work at Pixar and how they feel about their jobs there. All of this is to say that I understand why Soul couldn't commit to just one theme, and why the creators couldn't decide on an ending. But that doesn't excuse the fact that they chose the worst ending possible, and that the movie was still a complete mess, because Soul went out of its way to bring up all of these real issues everyone's having, and then undermines all of them with a toxic message that just tells you to stop caring about your problems. And honestly, I really think this movie should have just been about how you can or need to make compromises with your dream. The fact is, 95% of people won't ever have a chance to work at their dream job, and a lot of the time it won't even be their fault. Success doesn't just come from hard work. There's also a lot of luck involved. You have to be lucky to even be in a position to do what you love, and by definition, very few people get to be lucky. But I think my generation in particular has been almost brainwashed to think that our jobs can and should be our dream jobs, and it's really bad for our mental health. So a good movie showing both that it's okay that you aren't following your dream and showing how you can make your life more fulfilling in other ways would be really healthy for everyone. Pixar could have had something truly special with Soul that could have fundamentally changed the way an entire generation viewed their lives. But they couldn't commit to any of their ideas, so we ended up getting a movie that tries to show a lot of ideas, but ends up not really saying much about any of them.